Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. To give you a quick overview of how these presentations are going to be set up, I'm going to be doing a presentation of our CryoVault platform and then introducing Jessica McRoskey, who will then talk to you about SepraPor membrane characterization. So thanks again for coming. I'm David Lange, Senior Product Engineer and Project Manager at Meissner, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about our single-use freeze and thaw solution, the Meissner CryoVault platform. And in particular, to introduce the newest addition to the platform, the Bench Top Freezer system, to support the process development scale of the platform. So to quickly give an overview of what we're going to cover today, we're going to briefly review the CryoVault platform and discuss how this platform can scale for you to set the larger context of how the Bench Top Freezer system fits into the platform. We're then going to introduce the Bench Top Freezer system and then explore an example of how you can leverage the system to create representative freeze and thaws of your at-scale processes. So to introduce CryoVault, CryoVault is a scalable, robust, and completely single-use end-to-end solution to bulk drug substance freezing and thawing. It was developed out of a need to provide a single-use alternative to traditional cryovessel technology, but to still provide that security and scalability that some film-based solutions are challenged with. The CryoVault solution addresses these challenges by introducing rigid HDPE single-use biocontainers. These biocontainers are extremely robust, with our 100-liter biocontainer consisting of a 1/4-inch wall thickness and can be burst pressured over 50 psi. With these containers, we're able to offer a plethora of different container sizes, all the way from our smallest 40 ml and 120 ml stability containers to our intermediate production scale 1, 5, and 20-liter containers, all the way to our largest container offering, the 100-liter CryoVault container. Taking into account, we can also fully customize the top works of these containers and really use the flexibility of the top works and the different sizes we are able to offer to provide a solution to your specific needs. And these containers are fully single-use. And also, since these containers are constructed out of a single material, HDPE, they can also be recycled as well. But the containers themselves are really just a piece of the overall CryoVault platform. The complete platform is comprised of 4 main components to provide a complete end-to-end solution to your freeze and thaw process. So, number one, we have our single-use containers that we just discussed. These are really the central component of the platform, and the remaining pieces are all going to cater to these containers. Number two, pre-qualified freeze and thaw units to enable controlled and repeatable freezing and thawing. 3, material handling, specifically designed and pre-qualified to support the biocontainers throughout the entire freeze and thaw process. This is going to include everything from transportation, filling, mixing, and dispense. And then number 4, distribution components. This is really to facilitate, enable, or robust and secure intra-facility transport via ship or air. Really taken together, these components are meant to provide an infrastructure to support the entire freeze and thaw unit processing step. Now, a really critical aspect of this platform is scalability. We're able to support this scalability in a few different ways. First of all is operational scalability. The containers themselves are not the only aspect of the platform that's going to scale with you. Regardless of whether you're implementing the smaller production scale containers or the large 100-liter biocontainers, those 4 main components we just discussed, the biocontainers, freeze thaw units, material handling, and distribution components are all going to support your scaling as well, again, to provide that operational flexibility in your freeze and thaw bulk drug substance processing. In addition, the platform can also support scalability in your freeze and thaw performance. And to see how this is accomplished, we're going to take a quick look at how these containers are designed to facilitate controlled freeze and thaw. In this particular illustration, we have our containers in a blast freezer with forced convection parallel to the broad surface of the biocontainers. And we're going to look at quick simulation of a cross-section through the center of these containers. And you can see here that the container freezing is primarily going to occur from the broad side of the container into the center. That distance of freezing from the broad side of the container to the center is the characteristic geometric factor that's really going to determine your freeze performance in our containers. And this distance is referred to as the freeze path length, or the FPL for short. This freeze path length geometry is represented in all of our CryoVault sizes to allow for consistent freeze and thaw performance for various scales of operation. A particular note, the 40 ml and 120 ml CryoVault container length, got an example of the actual 40 ml container right here, is, so the length of this container is 1/2 the width of our at-scale 20-liter containers. Now, you can imagine if we're able to focus heat exchange on one side of our stability container while insulating the other side, we'd be able to force a characteristic freeze path length of our smallest containers to match the at-scale 20-liter and 100-liter biocontainers. If we're then able to match the freeze and thaw profile of these 40 ml and 120 ml containers to that of the commercial scale, we can simulate freeze and thaw kinetics of the at scale and call the freeze thaw process representative. The benchtop freezer system is our answer to facilitating this representative freeze and thaw and to provide a scaled down model to support process development studies of the at scale while only using a fraction of the process fluid and without requiring the expansive infrastructure of the large scale platform. This benchtop freezer offering is composed of 4 main components. We have the benchtop freezer heat exchanger, the temperature control unit to facilitate those repeatable and controlled freezes and thaws, the Meisner benchtop freezer software, and the 40 and 120 ml CryoVault consumables. So the benchtop freezer heat exchanger is really what's going to be facilitating this freeze path length and controlled freeze and thaw of our stability containers. It can fit up to 10 of either our 40 ml or 120 ml CryoVaults, and it's outfitted with an integrated data acquisition board to facilitate high fidelity in-process temperature monitoring, along with support of an additional 3 thermocouple ports. The system is also outfitted with Meisner software for a single point of control for this whole system. It also supports freeze and thaw recipe development and test management, live test monitoring and data recording. It comes preloaded with recipes matching our at-scale water studies, which, when applicable, can be used as an effective template for creating your own recipes for your specific process parameters. The software also automatically generates test reports detailing your freeze and thaw results. It also facilitates 21 CFR Part 11 compliance as well. And then, of course, we have the actual 40 ml and 120 ml containers. Again, the top works can be fully customized, and these containers can be ported to facilitate in-process temperature monitoring during your freeze and thaw studies. So now we're going to jump into a quick example of how the benchtop freezer system can be leveraged to match our freeze and thaws of at-scale processes. In this case, we're going to be looking at matching the last point to freeze and thaw of 6 20-liter CryoVault containers in a blast freezer. And in this scenario, we already have an understanding of our freeze and thaw processing time and temperature profile. On the benchtop side, we'll be using 10 40 ml CryoVault containers ported with non-fluid contact probes ported at the last point to freeze to match this at-scale freeze and thaw process. And we can use this benchtop freezer software to manage and track the development of these freeze thaw recipes as we iterate to create an acceptable freeze and thaw response. By leveraging the preloaded freeze thaw recipes that are installed as part of the benchtop freezer software, you can substantially reduce the amount of time and iterations required to produce that desired scaled down model output. So Let's take a look at how the scale down model can match our 6 by 20 liter freeze. Here we have our at scale last point to freeze profile in red. And for this particular process, our effective freeze time is 9 hours and 36 minutes. In the gradients of blue, we have freeze profiles of all 10 of our 40 ml containers with an effective freeze time of 9 hours and 30 minutes. We're able to match the at-scale temperature profile to within minutes. Furthermore, we're able to control the 40 ml containers with very little variation. In this case, the container-container standard deviation is 1 minute and 22 seconds. This tight variation is characteristic of the system, especially when leveraging our non-fluid contact thermal wells. So, moving on to take a look at matching the thaw of our 6 by 20 liter at-scale process, which you can see in red. In this case, we have an effective thaw of 12 hours and 49 minutes. And in our matching study, we have an effective thaw of 12 hours and 40 minutes. Here again, we have super small container-container variation at 1 minute and 22 seconds. So you can see here that we're able to very closely model these at-scale freeze and thaw processes. So really by enabling this precise control of temperature profiles of our stability containers in a configuration that matches the freeze path length of our commercial scale CryoVaults, the Bench Top Freezer becomes a tool to deploy scaled down models in an integrated package and further expands on our support of process development on the CryoVault platform. So if you'd like to learn more about the CryoVault platform or other offerings, please check out our website at Meister.com or come by and visit us at booth 2343. And now I'd like to introduce Jessica McRoskey, who's going to present on SepraPor membrane characterization. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, David, for the introduction. Again, my name is Jessica McRoskey. I am an engineer with the Research and Development team at Meisner, and today I'm going to be talking to you about our SepraPor Hollow Fiber Membrane characterization for improved process reliability. So our SepraPor product line is a line of tangential flow filters that utilizes hollow fiber membranes, which are ideal for feed streams with high particulate and solids loading, or feed streams with shear sensitive product. We currently offer microfiltration filters with retention ratings of 0.1, 0.2, and 0.45 microns. And we are very excited to announce we will be launching our ultrafiltration product line in summer of this year. We have already been working with beta testing partners and smaller scale customers up to this point, but summer is when you will be able to access this all on our website and it will be available for everyone. And at that point, we will be offering retention ratings of 10 to 750 kilodaltons. And for our entire SepraPor filter line, we have effective filtration areas of 0.01 to 8.3 square meters to ensure that we can cover the full range of your process scalability. So just for a little bit of context with the ultrafiltration versus microfiltration membranes, ultrafiltration is defined in molecular weight cutoff, so that's where you get the kilodaltons, whereas you have microfiltration in microns. But this is some pyrometry data, which we look at with all of our membranes, and you can see the pore size distribution of those membranes. So here are just a few to show the ultrafiltration membranes. The nominal pore size would be on the nanoscale range, and then micropore is in microns. And that's going to lend itself to some different applications. As a loose statement, I would say ultrafiltration you're going to see more commonly in the downstream applications, where microfiltration is going to be more common for upstream applications. And a couple of those examples for ultrafiltration might be purification and concentration. for example, viral and non-viral vectors for cell and gene therapy, mRNA and VLP for vaccines, and also antibody processing. And on the microfiltration side, probably the most common one that you hear of is cell culture perfusion. And this is a demanding application because those runs can last for weeks at a time. And you need your filtered performance to be reliable and stable over the entirety of that process. You'll also see microfiltration membranes used for some concentration, sometimes with bacterial or mammalian cells. So first off, I want to talk to you about our microfiltration membranes. And they are manufactured with polysulfone and have very tight wall thickness tolerances as well as highly symmetric porosity, as you can see in these SEM images. And we actually do SEM imaging of every lot of hollow fiber membrane that we manufacture to ensure that we are maintaining that consistency and quality. And these characteristics are important when you're considering the consistent cross-flow, high throughput, and long filtration lifespan. And we recognize that consistency can be one of the biggest challenges with integrating tangential flow filters into your process. And filter variability in your process can result in having to change other processing parameters to maintain the same batch-to-batch performance. That is why it is so important to choose a membrane that is going to minimize this and make your job easier. So here we can see the bubble point ranges specifications of 3 different suppliers. And I think it is surprising at first glance that the bubble point ranges between the different suppliers could vary so much. Although all of these membranes pass the bacterial and mycoplasma retentive challenges that define the ranges of the porosities, the membrane morphology and structure and post-processing are going to result in performance differences across the suppliers. And those differences are important to note because when you're choosing a membrane or a filter for your process, you want to minimize variability and to make your process more reproducible and efficient. So as you can see from our bubble point ranges, we focus on providing narrow and distinct bubble point ranges. And this is important for a few reasons on the performance side. So I'm going to get a little bit more into that with a couple of examples using the 0.2 micron membrane bubble point ranges. So here we can see the flux range versus bubble point. And if we take the bubble point ranges, copy paste those onto this graph, and we have supplier A and Meissner. These are overlapping bubble point ranges. Meissner's has a narrower range. Supplier A is wider. We can look at the trend on a maximum potential change in flux from batch to batch. So another way of describing that would be if you ordered 2 filters from the same supplier, if one was performing with a minimum flux performance and the other was performing with the maximum flux performance, what is the possible range of variability that you could see in your process? And this is extremely important because if you can minimize that range of flux, you are maximizing reproducibility in your process. And again, probably reducing the changes that you will have to make to other processing parameters to maintain that same batch-to-batch performance. So let's look at another example focused on the process efficiency. And actually, this is the same graph. I know it looks a little bit different. We just slid over the axis. But now we want to look at Meissner versus supplier B. And again, these are the 0.2 micron membrane bubble point ranges that you saw before. Now, this would be the full range of flux values you could possibly see in your process. But to make it a little bit more clear, if we take all of the data points for Meissner, because we have quite a bit of historical data internally, we can make a box and whisker plot and see what that range of flux would be. And supplier B, it's a little bit of a placeholder here, so ask you to focus on the trend, but this is the full range from min to max of possible flux values within that bubble point range. And this is important because typically if you have two membranes with the same porosity and same filtration performance, the one with the higher flux is going to make your process more efficient. And you can see here that there is some overlap between the two membranes. However, if you had to choose one that was going to be more reliably efficient, I think that it would be a Meissner membrane. So in summary, when we say things like we want narrow and distinct bubble point ranges while maintaining that high flux, what that really means for performance is we want to make your process more reproducible, we want to minimize performance overlap between the porosities, and we want to make your process as efficient as possible. So now moving on to the ultrafiltration membranes. We again see the SEM image here, and you can definitely tell the difference between ultrafiltration and microfiltration membranes, particularly because of this dense skin layer that you will see on the inside of the fibers. Now for ultrafiltration membranes, this is important for maintaining the proper passage performance, whereas that looser pore structure in the center acts to support the membrane while maintaining higher flux. And all of our membranes are also processed carefully to ensure that the flux is stable even after autoclave or SIP cycles. Just to do a quick overview of how ultrafiltration membranes are characterized, because it is in molecular weight cutoff versus microns like microfiltration. So ultrafiltration membranes are challenged with polymer markers that have known molecular weights. So for example here, you can see markers 1, 2, and 3, or for this presentation, small, medium, and large molecules. And you want to challenge the membrane and record the percent passage through the membrane. Depending on the ranges of percent passage at each of these molecular weights, you can define the membrane using a molecular weight cutoff or defining it in kilodaltons. And this characterization does differ a bit between suppliers, and so we have applied a demanding method to ensure reliable membrane performance. So let's get into that a little bit deeper. So here you can see the passage performance of a 300 kilodalton membrane from supplier A. And this specification gives you a maximum passage percentage at marker 2. Now, we don't feel that this gives you enough information about the membrane performance and its passage profile. There's a lot missing here. And so, for example, these two curves, you can see that they are both passing specification, but they would have distinctly different performance in application. That is why we always use a minimum of 3 molecular weight markers to define our ultrafiltration membranes. And here you can see why that is so important. It is much more clear what the passage performance is going to be from this membrane over a wider range of molecular weights. And using 3 molecular weight markers is also beneficial when you're looking at the differences in performance across porosities. So if we split these two suppliers apart, and we're still looking at 300 kilodalton membranes here, but if we now take a look at the 100 kilodalton membrane right next to it, you will see that there's significantly less overlap between the passage percent ranges when you are using 3 molecular weight markers. And this is also aided by the fact that we use a range rather than a maximum passage percent. So in summary, this is what one of our actual molecular weight cutoff bands would look like. And you can see the data from 3 different lots of 300 kilodalton membrane. Now, if each membrane must fall within each of these bands, as well as meeting minimum flux requirements in order to pass our lot release requirements. So, for example, if your marker 1 drops out of specification, but markers 2 and 3 are still well within the bands, that membrane is considered out of specification and would never end up in a customer filter. This demanding characterization ensures lot-to-lot membrane consistency in your application. So we have lots of resources online on our website as well as 24/7 support. And here you can find brochures, green docs, videos, an application note for our microporous membranes. So definitely go ahead and give that a look. And also feel free to come visit our booth and ask me any questions you might have about our SepraPor membrane line or about tangential flow filters. Thank you so much for your attention. Do you guys have any questions, I guess, for either of us? Yeah.
You mentioned 10 to 300. Do you have what the sizes between them?
Oh, I'm sorry. So for ultrafiltration, we will be offering retention ratings of 10 to 750 kilodaltons.